This is DeDrakis Hart. He was serving time in the Georgia Department of Corrections for voluntary homicide and aggravated battery. He's been in prison since 2015 and wasn't set to be released until 2043. But he didn't allow a little thing like 30 years in prison to stand in the way of his love life. This is Ariane Grace, a 24-year-old mother of two contracted food service worker in Smith State Prison in Georgia. And she made a mistake that cost her her life. Now, Ariane was a contracted food service worker, and she'd only been there for a few months. So I'm not quite sure if she was used to working with this population. Now, you're working in a maximum security prison. Now, in a maximum security prison, a lot of time these inmates are repeat offenders. A lot of them are master manipulators. So if you put someone in there who's not used to working in that type of population, you're asking for trouble. So Ariane and DeDrakis start a relationship. They have a sexual relationship. And at some point, that relationship went bad and DeDrakis shot himself while leaving a suicide note. Now, Smith State Prison was already under investigation. They had a huge problem with contraband going in and out of the prison. They had a huge problem with safety and violence. A corrections officer just a few months earlier was stabbed to death with a shank. So Smith State Prison was already under investigation, and there was huge questions on the leadership and safety of the prison. In fact, contraband was such an issue with the prison that when the young lady was killed, the police were doing their investigation and they did not reach out to the family quite yet because they needed all the information. They want to find out exactly who is the person they're supposed to contact. They're trying to get all the information first before they reach out to the family and let them know that their loved one had died in the prison. But they had such a contraband problem that the inmates were able to take the illegal cell phones that they smuggled into the prison. The inmates were able to access Ariane's Facebook page, Twitter account, find out who her mother was, and they were able to contact her mother and say, hey, we're just letting you know that your daughter died here in prison. She was murdered. And the mother freaks out. So the mother is irate. She's on the news and talking to anybody who will listen. She's saying that the prison is negligent. They should be taking care of their employees. I sent my daughter to work and there's an expectation of safety and she shouldn't be murdered by some inmate. How did that inmate get the gun? Now, the prison says, well, you do realize that your daughter was having a sexual relationship with this inmate. It's quite possible she smuggled a gun in for him. She said none of that matters. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is the prison should have better security and they should be taking care of their employees much better. It is unsafe and unacceptable that a murderer has access to a gun. Now, she's correct in some ways, but there is a certain amount of personal responsibility that all people should have. You go to work and don't use it as a dating service. Plus, if you meet a man who is serving 30 years in prison for homicide and battery, you can't act surprised when you find out he has a violent streak because he just might kill you and kill himself. But it's a sad situation. You feel sorry for the family that's left behind. But, sometimes God works in mysterious ways and maybe it's just a learning lesson for everybody else out there. A maximum security prison is not a dating service.